Hello, all Gray Sims School community. My name is Chris Bing, and I am the superintendent of this wonderful district. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the operating millage that we have that is on the August 2nd ballot. It is a renewal of our operating millage and how we fund our schools. So on Tuesday, August 2nd, registered voters will have the opportunity to vote on the measure. It is a non-homestead millage renewal. This does not apply to the people who don't live within our boundaries. So interestingly enough, this is something that people who live within the boundaries of our school district can vote on, but in most cases, it doesn't apply to those people, meaning that they don't have to pay on anything. They have a say, but they don't have to pay. So, if approved by the voters, what is it going to do? Well, what is it going to do for us? It'll help us to levy the 18 mil limit by law on non-homestead properties. It'll eliminate any reductions that we have to do in our operating budget, and it'll allow the school district to be made whole and collect its full share of the state aid funding. So, the way that schools are funded in the state of Michigan is that you have to locally collect as much as possible on your non-homestead properties, and we'll talk about what those are exactly in just a moment. And if you do that and collect less than what the state says you should receive per student, the state will make you whole by making up that difference. So, in easy numbers, if you are supposed to get $5,000 per student and you only locally are able to collect $4,000 per student, the state will make up the difference as long as you're levying 18 mills on your non homestead properties. So, who's affected by this proposal? Well, if you're a business owner, if you have rental properties, if you have vacant land, or if you have second homes. Now, it is important to remember, however, that if you fall into any of these categories, you're not going to have an increase on anything that you haven't already been paying for years and years and years and years around this area. So this is not a change, it's just a renewal. So again, will not affect the tax rate on the homeowner's primary residence. And because this millage affects the school district and the community, all the registered voters who live in our district can vote in this election. It's really important that you get out there and you vote. Today, as I'm recording this, it's the day after our Independence Day. It's July 5th, and our absentee ballots are already out there. So many people have had the opportunity already to register their votes. If you intend on doing that by absentee, hopefully this will help. Otherwise, hopefully you will be able to hear this, get any of your questions answered through emailing of me, and then be able to register that vote in person on August 2nd. So as I said, this covers about 42% of our school district budget. That's a lot. When you think about what we're looking at, this goes towards things like our programs, what we offer our kids for resources, our staffing that we have in place, fitting the right kinds of people into the right place to make our students the most successful they can possibly be. A good chunk of our budget, about 80% of our budget, is tied up in getting the right people in the right place to give our kids what they need to be successful. So, as you can imagine, 42% of our budget, that's a big chunk of what we're going to do. We wouldn't be able to maintain what we have as our current offerings if we were to lose out on that 42%. So, if this were not renewed, we would have a very difficult time making choices about what areas to cut and what things that we'd have to reduce by. So think about it as if you had 42% of your family income was suddenly just gone, what would you do? How would you cope? You'd have to make some very big changes, and that's exactly what we'd have to do. So what comes up a lot is, what is a mill and why does it have to be renewed? So a mill is roughly equivalent to about the taxable value on half of your home value. So it's not necessarily what you paid for it, but what it's worth now. But the longer you've lived in a home, typically the lower your taxable value. So a mill is $1 out of $1,000 of taxable value. 18 mills would therefore be $18 on that, 100,000. So a mill equal to $1 for every $1,000 of taxable value. The state of Michigan by law requires school districts to levy 18 mills on non-homestead property in order to receive their full share of state aid funding. So going back to an example, I'll give you some more realistic numbers here. With simple math, if the K-12 budget came in from our state legislature at $8,000 funding per pupil, and I'm using easy numbers here, we actually get a little bit more than that, but if we had $8,000 and we had 400 students in our district, then we'd have a foundation allowance, that's what they call that, of about $3.2 million. In this scenario, if we levied the required 18 mills on our non-homestead property, that would bring us a return of about $2.4 million. Okay, the state would then say, hey, All Gray Sims, you've done everything that you're supposed to do. You've collected 2.4. You're supposed to get 3.2. You've collected 2.4 locally. We're going to make up that difference. We're going to give you that other $800,000. Now make you whole $3.2 million. If, however, we only levied 12 mills on our non-homestead property, then our local collection would only bring in about $1.6 million. The state would not make us whole. They would assume that we're still levying 18. And because they assume that we're levying the 18, they're still only going to give us $800,000. And so to put that all together, we would have about $800,000 less than we were supposed to have, which is about $2,000 less per student. That adds up very, very fast. And that's why this is so important. We want to be made whole because we want to make whole children. So in this election, you have one of three choices that you can make. You can vote no, you can not vote, or you can vote yes. So you have two ways to make the vote count in this election. You can vote by absentee, and you can vote at the polls on August 2nd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. I hope this video was informational. I hope that it provided you some of the information that you need to be able to make an educated choice when it comes to your ballot. If you do have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about this with you further. I can be reached at 989-876-7150 or via email at mingc@ags-schools.org. Thank you and have a wonderful day.